Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, friends. So glad that you're here with me today. You're in for a real treat with our guest today. We have Hannah Hembree Bell. She is an award-winning Austin family law attorney, mom of four, and founder and CEO of one of the fastest-growing family law firms in the country, Hembree Bell Law. This episode, we cover a lot of ground. We start by talking about why things can change for women in menopause when it comes to their marriage and partnerships, how things like not having balance start to come up and why. We talk about things we could do in our marriage to nurture it and help to keep it positive, but also what to do when the decision of divorce has been made and where to start. And there's some pitfalls to avoid. And she shares her personal story and how she learned along the way these tips that she's sharing in this episode today. But there's something in this episode for every single woman listening. So, you know, if you're not going through a divorce, if you're happily married, you still stay tuned. Like this, there's so many good things in this episode. There's something for everyone. Like I said, Hannah has a free group, which I will link in the show notes, along with a free course. She has so many resources, so make sure to check them out if you need her. We have so many incredible guests to kick off 2026. I'm so grateful. Some of the episodes that we've had this month have been incredible. I'm just like, can't believe the guests and the knowledge that they have and the amazing things that they've shared with us so far. And we have many more to come. So make sure that you are subscribed to Learning to Glow, whether you're subscribing on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen, so you don't miss anything. And share this episode. Share this with a friend. Share this with a woman in your life that could benefit from this information, because I'm sure there's a lot of women that could use this. So make sure to share this episode, share the podcast. It really helps get the word out as well. And here is Hannah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learning to Glow. And today we have a special guest with us. Hannah, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Jess.
So thrilled to have you. You're an attorney and you help women navigate divorce. And I am so excited to talk about this topic. Actually, we've never talked about it on our show. And I know it's something that a lot of women need help navigating through. So please, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we can go from there.
Oh, absolutely. So I lead an amazing law firm in Central Texas. So I'm located in Austin, but we're sort of like in the whole San Antonio, Austin, Waco area. And we help people in their marriage as well. Like when I tell people that, oftentimes they'll kind of giggle like, wait, what? And essentially what we try to do is help people in divorce as well as they can given their circumstances, which that varies a lot. Sometimes that's still pretty messy. Sometimes it's can be really, a soft and great ending to something that just wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way in doing that work, I started to see some patterns and some trends and some behaviors, particularly among women, that was not setting them up well for their divorce. And they I thought needed some extra help and support of how to get prepared emotionally, psychologically, financially, legally before they ever started the process, because they'd come in and like a day late and a dollar short to my office. And so I created a course, My Confident Divorce. You can see it at myconfidentdivorce.com. It's free. And it helps women prepare for divorce without losing their kids, money, and sanity. And then from there, it just kind of grew, because what I found is a lot of women go through this experience. I mean, the overwhelming majority of women go through this experience, but somehow still feel very alone in it, which the numbers just don't make sense for that, but it's just true. So we also created The Circle, which is a free online community for women to get together through divorce and beyond. And so it's really just meeting women where they are and essentially saying, you're not alone. And yeah, this can be really hard, but there are some ways to do it that soften it a little.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you have free resources for women going through this, because I can imagine for many people, this is like, okay, I've never done this before. I don't even know where to start. And then you're navigating something so hard and difficult, but also just not knowing the legal steps and, all of those things all at the same time, I can imagine is so difficult. So, do you want to share how you started in this and like what led you to work in this field on this topic?
Yeah, sure. I got here sort of the old fashioned way. And this is how I've done most things in my life is going through it myself, doing it all wrong, and then living to tell the tale. So I had been married about 10 years when I got divorced. But I went in knowing like I was sort of army crawled my way to that decision. And I find a lot of women do the same thing. We consider it for years. We really get to the end of our rope. And then we say, okay, like I just can't do this anymore. And we kind of think we've made it to the finish line. I definitely did. Like making the divorce decision for me felt like a finish line. But what happened was I didn't have any preparation. I didn't have a strategy. All I knew was I had to get out. And what happened was my divorce did not go well as a result. Like I painted myself and backed myself into a corner where the best option was to make a deal in mediation where my kid, or like through informal mediation, my kids stayed with my now ex-husband primarily at first. And I became the quote unquote dad and saw them every other weekend. It was just absolutely terrible and horrible. And fast forward a little bit, I ended up filing what we call in Texas a custody modification, or sometimes they call it like post judgment or post decree or something like that. And through that, went in with a very, very different approach. And I'd learned a lot, right, the first time by doing it wrong. I had a strategy. I had a game plan. I did get prepared. I did gather my evidence. And in doing that, went back and was successful. In Texas, we have actually jury trials on custody issues. So we had a jury trial, and my kids, I flipped custody. My kids came back to live with me primarily. And I've been sort of living in that world and with the conflict and ongoing drama that comes with that for about 10 years now. One of my kids is aged out. She's a college freshman. I have an older son who doesn't anymore. Like life keeps lifing. Who lives with his dad exclusively now, and has for the last couple of years, and then a younger son who is in high school. And then I'm now remarried, so there's a happily ever after to this whole thing. I am remarried, and we have a 4-year-old. So I've sort of like lived this whole journey from a gal in the lowest low to the happily ever after, but like with lots of bumps in between. And I'm the sort of person who, once I make it through something, I'm not just like dust my hands with it and done, but I go back and see like, how can I help other people in this circumstance? So that's why I switched, because I was in a big law firm, like fancy lawyer law firm. And then everybody thought I was insane for leaving and starting my own family law firm. And then here I am, and it's just continued to evolve from there.
I think it's such a beautiful thing when you can go through something so challenging and difficult and still have the desire to help others with that information and share. Like I feel like that's me with in the health area, in the health space. It's like when you see something that you've been through that is so hard, but you also want to share, like, please take this with what you want. Like this helped me so much. And I went through that hell to now come here and be able to share that with others and help others. I think that's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So I would love to, you talk about helping women, and especially like a lot of what I've seen on your website and everything is especially during midlife, women in menopause, women in, our listeners are a lot of women in midlife. And you talk about how sometimes at this age, in this time in our lives, we are starting to reevaluate our, everything, but also our marriages. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what happens to a woman at midlife, there are health changes and hormones and all of that stuff. And to me, that's sort of table stakes. Bottom line, you got to get that stuff nailed in because if you can have a million problems unless you have a health problem and then you have one problem, right?
Yes.
And so I think that, that's a point where sometimes our bodies are screaming at us and where we have to make some changes physically and get the support we need physically so that we can consider the rest of our life. And it's like something about that. I think it's the culmination of years of people pleasing and over functioning and giving for absolutely everybody else in our life, our kids, our spouses, our jobs, our friends, our parents, etc. And then something when you're getting to menopause, I was thinking about whether it's correlation or causation. I think it just kind of goes together. Part of it is the timing in your 40s and into your 50s. I call it your give a dang's busted, right? You're just over it and you're unwilling / unable to continue to show up in the way that you did. And just like, you know what? I'm not going to live my entire life miserable, or putting up with his BS that I've been doing all this time. Why did I do that? The things we did as a younger woman to get our needs met, to feel worthy, to feel loved, etc. To feel like we were doing what society expected us to do, to follow the path in front of us. It's like something in us in our 40s and 50s is like looking around. I mean, fried green tomatoes is the quintessential this in a way, right? It's just like, wait, what? No, like for Wanda, right? Kind of a thing of like, we're not doing this. And so I love all the conversations happening, particularly online, of women, all of us in this phase. And I think in some ways it's those of us who were the first group that had the internet as kind of, teenagers, semi-adults, like, from teens going into adults. And we've just kind of aged up with the internet. And we're just the conversations when we're back on MySpace back in the day. Now we're just at the age where we're all talking about the menopause conversation. And just, I see it like pushing through that conversation. So I think more than anything, it's an awakening that happens, born out of really just getting fed up and done with doing too much of the wrong things and feeling unfulfilled and feeling unhappy and feeling like, isn't there something more to life than this? Like, isn't there something else out there? And looking around at the marriage and you're like, wait a minute, why have I been putting up with somebody being such a jerk to me or unkind to me or completely paying no attention to me whatsoever, not caring as much about me as he might a stranger in the street, right? So I think that it's those things all sort of unfolding at once.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned fried green tomatoes. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, it's so good. I know.
So
I know. We should all watch it once a year.
I feel like that should go back on my playlist for sure for this year. I love everything that you said about this. And I think one of the things also is that women at this age there's a lot of burden and there's maybe too much on our plate. And like you said, there's an awakening of like, wait, I don't want to, this feels imbalanced, right? Like there's just, it doesn't feel fair. And you talk about menopause can expose that, the imbalances of it all. I'd love if you could expand on that as well.
Yeah, I think, I was actually just having a conversation with my now husband last night. And I am pre-menopause, like that's what the test would show. I'm 42, but definitely on like some hormone supplements. So I have the health part kind of lined up. But I'm also at this point in my life of just really winnowing away who I really am underneath all the behaviors and things that I've learned over the years to keep myself safe, to survive, to succeed. And now that I'm kind of leveled out and stable and have some success in those things, I'm like, I'm not really willing / able to engage in those same behaviors anymore. So like I was talking with my husband last night, we're doing this house project. There's a lot going on. And I talked with him about, and he's just the best man and such a great guy. And we had a conversation about like, look, I've been carrying the load here, like on this house project and stuff at home and all these things. And like, I know you're stressed at work and you've got a lot of other stuff going on, but I'm unwilling to do it. I am unwilling to be the one in charge of closing every loop, making sure that everything gets done, pushing things through. It's imbalanced. And it's like, at least for me, my psyche and my system is unwilling to tolerate that imbalance wherever I find it anymore. I've been starting to go to sleep more like at 10 o'clock instead of pushing midnight every single day, because it gets me imbalanced. And so I think there's this centering, if you let it, right? Like you can go through menopause and just think about only the physiological effects, right? Your body only, and you'll miss a big part of it. But I think it's also a time to recalibrate. And a lot of us, in your 40s and 50s, you've got your kids are maybe grown, maybe they're out of the house. I started back over. I've got a 4-year-old at 42. I did not see that coming. I feel like I should be almost an empty nester, not we're at preschooler. But here we are. I love it also. But our kids have gotten bigger, and we're having a little bit more room and a little bit more space. And we're willing and able to think about, what am I going to do with this space? What am I willing to put into it? And also, I think there's some degree of somehow after 40, we're like, I'm on the back nine here. I don't think most of us are going to die at 80 at this point, right? But in our brains, like the time you die is 80. Like that just means when you're really old. So if you make it to 40, you're halfway there. And it's like, whoa, I'm on the back nine, and there's still so much I haven't done or seen or want to do. And I better do something. So I think it's that recalibration, if you welcome it and if you let it. I think, the man's answer to this is what, has in the movies been portrayed as a midlife crisis. That's their own version of wait a minute. Their question is, do I still got it? I think that's the kind of thing that they think. And on our end, it's the question is more like, am I living a life that I'm proud of and that I enjoy? And I think a lot of us, the truth is, the answer is no, we're not, because we spent so much time living it for everyone else. So that it takes a self-acknowledgement and awareness and a recentering. Abby Eckel, this gal online that is just posting the most amazing things. I feel like I'm her PR department because I'm telling everybody about her. But she talks about recentering yourself in your own life, because I think so many of us have written ourselves out of our own story. And I think at this age, at this phase in life, we're just not really willing to continue to do that. And sometimes that means that the marriage you're in, the relationship you're in, doesn't serve you anymore. And you have enough life experience to know that you can do hard things, you can make it. And so you're like, I'm just not going to continue to invest my life force energy in this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so good. I love what you were saying. Earlier you'd mentioned you also help people in their marriages. It's not just with navigating divorce. And I want to get into how we can help, so maybe some helpful hints or tips on what we can do through that divorce process. But I want to, before we get there, you had mentioned your husband and how you have this really great conversation and being open and communicative about this isn't feeling balanced right now. And I read about something that you do in the beginning of the year, an audit. So I thought, since we're talking about marriage, let's talk about that first. And I think a lot of people's goals is how can we nurture our relationships? No one gets married with the intent of getting divorced. Yeah. So let's start there, and then we can get to, all this didn't work out. We're going to go to the next step, but let's start with, tell us about this audit, because I was so interested when I read about this, and in my own marriage, I'm I want to start doing this as well. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So we've done it now. I guess it's officially 2 years. So we're okay, this is a thing, and I've for a long time been new year, new me kind of person. Actually, I'm approaching it a little differently in that regard this year than I ever have, but very much new year. Gretchen Rubin says a new start is a good time for a new start. So I always think of the new year as a new start, reset, recalibrate in a way that's sort of, I don't know, easier than a random Tuesday. Of okay, now I'm whatever. So I guess it was last year I kind of invited Drew into that experience with me, and we ripped off some of Mel Robbins' stuff last year and did another version of it with Mel Robbins plus ChatGPT, which I'm obsessed with, and put something together for this year. So it's been 2 years in a row. And what we did each year was go to a local spa we're fortunate to be able to do that and spend the day. Actually, this year it cost me nothing because I had a gift card that one of my amazing vendors had given me for my birthday. So like got to even do that. And we made sure we had childcare for the full day. And we started the morning, got our treatments and stuff, and really were just super intentional on working through a process to reset for the year. Less intentions, less lists of things we're going to do, and less let's how we're going to improve. And what we did this year, which is, I think I'll talk about this one because it's an improvement over last year's. There is definitely a backward looking. So that would sort of be the audit, right? Looking back, and that's focusing on the gain, not the gap. And Dan Sullivan writes this amazing book called The Gap and the Gain with Ben Hardy writes that with him as well. And they talk about you always measure backwards. And if you're always measuring forwards, it's against a horizon because your goals always change. That's why you get to a goal and immediately you're like not that satisfied and thinking of the next goal is when you're measuring forward. So if you feel anxious about the future or defeated, you're always measuring forward. But when you're measuring backward and you see how much was accomplished in a year, just imagine where you were last January. All the things that happened, all the strides you made, all the highs, all the lows, everything that occurred. So a big part of it is looking backward. Okay, what happened last year? And we had a little less time in a way because the treatments took a long time than we did the year before. Mel goes through a whole thing on her podcast talking about like going through all your photos on your phone because you forget what happened in a year. And oh yeah, we went on that trip. And oh, I remember that day. And you look at all the times that you really felt the most happy and the most fulfilled. And her hypothesis, which I think is true, is that's going to be largely the time she spent in relationship and with friends and with family and traveling and less like, here's all these pictures of me at my office, right? We didn't do that. What we did was chat GPT. I'm like, look, we don't have time for the whole Mel thing. So help us, knowing all you know about me, help make this in a way that supports us as we are. And so what we did was told each other, as we sit in like our bathrobes at the spa, like, here's 3 times when I was really proud of myself this year. And here's 3 times that really required me to have courage and be brave. And here's 3 things that were really hard. And here is something that still feels unfinished, right? So it put a little bit more parameters on that. And it was so interesting because at least one of my it's not really an aha, I already know this about myself, but golly, was it easy for me to list challenges, hard things, negatives. It was not easy for me to list all the things that I was proud of, right? Because it felt like, okay. So I sat with that for a minute. But that was sort of the look backwards part. And then what we did is, there was this kind of closure thing that chat helped us walk through about like, okay, what am I not carrying forward into 2026? Like, where am I done with my own BS? Yeah. And not going to carry that forward. And then that's the sort of closure and thanking our past selves for doing all of that, et cetera. And then, okay, looking forward, we ended up doing something that Mel had talked about where we developed our theme for the year, our word for the year, and the way we wanted to feel. And that it's already changing me. And working through those 3 different things is sort of your guiding principles, your North Star for the year. Because just saying the one word didn't ever quite do it for me. I never really did that. Like people are like, here's my word for the year, and it's perseverance or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. And so we both did that. And then I thought this was really great. As we worked through that together, Chad had us ask each other, like, what's a way that I can support you in living into that reality for yourself as a couple, which was great. Mm-hmm. And we do a thing every other week that we call the compliment dump, where we spend like on Sunday evening, my husband calls for it. And he's like, okay, it's time for our compliment session. Okay. And where we just point out a number of things that we've been loving about the other person lately. You say, I love you, but like love, that's general and vague, but it really feels good and lands when it's specific. Like, I really love the way that you, like for me would be Drew, that you shepherded us through the holidays. He's the MC at our house of holiday cheer and all of that. And he would say something like, I really love the way that you know, I mean, I don't know. As I'm sitting here trying to think of something he said to me, I can't. He said a whole long list, which is so sweet. But so we were saying we could add on to the compliment session a check-in. How you doing on living into your North Star feeling? And have that kind of conversation. And then also we talked about when either one of us is struggling or sort of living, seeming a bit out of balance or whatever, that we could ask each other, hey, let's run this through the like Mel framework. How do you want to feel? What's your word? What's the theme in how to make these decisions this year? And I used that already just the other day. I did it where I was struggling with, I was just kind of feeling agitated earlier this week and frustrated, which is not an emotion that I feel regularly. I don't feel annoyed, frustrated, aggravated, but I was. And I put it through the rubric in my brain, and it really did help me to kind of snap out of it and be like, okay, I need to regroup because I am not living consistent with that at all. Like, what can I do to support myself right now in accessing that other truer way that I want to feel? So this is year 2 that we did it in this way. I'm sure next year I'll have like a little bit of a different flavor, but it feels really good to build together in that way, to discuss it together in that way, to listen to the other person. Part of it is, no judgment of each other, no wrong making, right making, just being supportive. And what we added to this is I recorded voice memos on my phone of us the whole day, and then also fed that into ChatGPT and got it to support us in ways we can help support each other, what are areas of potential friction, and some analysis and stuff like that on the back end, which is pretty kind of like next level of doing it. But having that data, and then now that ChatGPT knows all of that, it can also help me when I ask questions and think through things in the year in supporting me in doing it consistent. And it knows my husband better. So when I'm talking about things, it heard him talk for half the day, which has been a pretty cool exercise to do together. So that's the thing, like, I don't know, happily married people who intend on being married forever. And I think that we will be. That realignment has meant a lot to us. And I definitely recommend that some people do their own version of that.
That is beautiful. And I'm totally on board with doing it at a spa.
Yeah.
I'm a spa person. Like, that is amazing. I love that. And I think it's really great to implement those check-ins, because a lot of times with the beginning of the year, you come up with your intention of the year or your word or anything like that, and you tuck it away in a folder, and then you see it in a year. And to come back and revisit that and be like, how am I like kind of going off track here from what I want this year to mean and to, the values that I'm bringing forth into this year. I think it's really important to do that. And then to have somebody to kind of co-do it with is so beautiful. And it just sounds like having that communication of, hey, you know what, how can I support you? Like, that's to hear that as a woman who is really overwhelmed in this time in our lives. Like, we've got our parents, our kids, finances, there's so many things, our health. It feels like the best thing you can hear. How can I support you? How can I, to be supported when you're feeling terrible and to know that somebody's there to ask you that is huge.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see. We're going to play it out this year.
That's so great. So, I think it takes a willing partner, and you have that and I have that. Let's talk about, the women who are like, I don't have that. I have made a decision. I know at this time of my life, like, I know what I want and I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. And they're like, what do I do? Like, where do you start? What is your advice for women who are like, okay, I made this really, really hard decision. Where do they go?
I would tell them to hold on a minute before you do anything. Like, that's the first thing, because I think that as capable, strong women, we're ready. Like, we made a decision. Let's go. Let's get this handled. Let's get moving. Let's get it done. Like, ready to go. And it would serve you well to take a beat You didn't come to that decision overnight. Don't start acting overnight. I really would tell them to do the coursework that's in there at myconfidentdivorce.com, where we walk through the 4 things you can do to get prepared for divorce without losing your kids' money or sanity. And I'll just tell you, like in big, broad strokes, the first step is starting with the end in mind. So we're going to walk through getting clear on where you're going, not just what you're running from, what you're running toward. Because if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. And most people do not do this step. They like, I roll, whatever. I just need to get divorced. You think that's it. But really getting clear and clean on where you want to get to is the way. The second thing we do is we craft what I call an all but done ABD plan. Because sometimes, like, you think that you're thinking about divorce, probably the other person might be considering it as well, and you don't want to get caught flat-footed. That's what's happened to me. I definitely got caught flat-footed, and we want to make sure you have a plan in place. Like, what are you going to do if he shows up and says, like, are you trying to divorce me? Like, what are you going to do if you're in an abusive situation? If that happens, like, we craft a plan for once you're ready to go. Can you pay your mortgage? Can you pay your bills? Are you going to be able to get the kids from school? Are they going to ride the bus? Like, what's going to happen? So we create that plan together. We become the parent of the year and be able to prove it. For parents, it's very, very important that you assess where you are now as a parent and do some cleanup on aisle 9 if some of that is maybe not you showing up as your best self. This is the most important. If you have kids and you're worried about custody at all, you can make some changes now and allow time to pass that can completely change the outcome of your divorce. But sometimes if you act too soon, it's too late to make any changes, and your life examined under a microscope may have consequences, including your kids not being with you primarily, like me, you not receiving child support, maybe even paying child support like I did. So I don't want that to happen to you. And that's the most important thing. If you have kids and you're worried about that, is to take the time to do that work. And then the last thing you'll do is create your divorce notebook. And we've got in there an outline of all the documents you need to get together to get prepared, and collect all of that when the waters are relatively quiet. And while you probably have decent access to that information, you do it before it's go time. I say that the process of gathering all those documents and things once the divorce has started is like trying to brush your teeth with Oreos in your mouth. It's kind of how it feels. Mm-hmm. So trying to get some of that stuff together as much as you can before you actually go and file. And then it also can save you a ton of money and time in your divorce because you have all of that together. But a lot of women in the middle of making this decision are completely overwhelmed, and doing all of that sounds like a lot more work. So I would just tell them, look, I hear you. If you didn't do anything else, I would tell you that first module in there, we do a group meditation, and we think about that life we're working towards. I think that is subtly the most important, because if you don't know where you're trying to get to when things get really hard, you may bail. You may say, never mind, this is too hard. I'm just going to stay. And that's what a lot of these men are really going to be banking on you doing. So taking the time, you can do it. It's less than an hour on a Friday night with a glass of wine, and just put it in your headphones. He doesn't have to know what you're listening to. Put me on 2 times speed, and just going through that mental exercise of trying to get clear on what you really want from your life. I think doing that alone, invest 1 hour. If you can't stomach the rest of it, at least it would get you thinking in the right direction.
That's such good advice. Thank you for offering that resource to everyone. That's amazing. So when you're working with people, what do you see in this process of like starting it and going through it that you would say that's kind of a mistake I see women make often? What are some things that you see that you're like, like that's not, let's see if we can do things a different way?
Yeah, they come in with hope as a strategy, and hope is not a strategy. Generally speaking, I'm going to talk very much in norms, and obviously there are a million exceptions, but generally speaking, men, they're going to come in with a strategy and a plan about how they're going to keep the most amount of money. And for some of the guys, the most amount of time with their kids. Women come in having army crawled their way to the divorce decision, depleted, run down. Like me, I was like that. I was surviving on 1 Jamba Juice a day. I could not eat. I could not take anything in. I was just skin and bones. And I was emotionally a wreck because it took everything I could to get to that point. And I just like hoped it would work out okay. Well, it didn't. I mean, ultimately, long term, it worked out okay, right? I think all things work for good. But at the time, just objectively speaking, it did not turn out okay. So I would tell them, look, I know how hard it is, and I know that it sucks. And Glennon Doyle tells us you can do hard things. Like we can do hard things. We're moms, we're women. We can do it. We've been doing hard things since the beginning of time. So it's a time, if you're at the end of your rope, to tie a knot and hang on, and don't just hope that everything will be okay, but start to take some steps and some actions to make sure that it's true.
Oh, that's so good. You are amazing, by the way.
Oh,
You really are. This is so helpful, and this is going to be so helpful for people. But if somebody wants to work with you and, go to you with their divorce, can you tell us how they can do that? Tell us more about ways that people can find you online and all of that good stuff.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I joke that like once you've listened to this and like I'm in your algorithm, like you're not going to be able to swing a stick on the internet without finding me. But I'm Hannah Hembree Bell. It's HEMBREE, Hembree Bell. And you can just go to hannahhembree.com/circle. That's to get you into the group. Members of the group get the course for free. And that's for people all over. So it's not tied to any sort of geographic location. If you want to hire us as like your divorce law firm, then in Austin, San Antonio, Waco, like this whole Central Texas area, we would love to help you. And you can go on to all of our socials, Hembree Bell Law or hembreebell.com, and schedule. We offer free case evaluations. So like where members of our team will talk through what's going on, see how we might be able to help, see where you're trying to get to, and then help begin the process of crafting a plan to get you there. And even if you're not local to us, I am connected with family lawyers all across the country, amazing people who do amazing work. And I love helping connect people who need each other. So I'd love to connect you with a referral for somewhere it was somebody, if you're not quite sure who to trust, because you started out talking about all this information and feeling overwhelmed. And I feel like the overwhelm comes from largely not sure who to trust. Yeah. We are inundated, just a deluge of information on any topic. And if you are looking at divorce stuff on the internet, there's all these coaches and all this different stuff. It's like, who can I trust? Who can I believe? And I think you can trust us and believe us. I'm limited in what I can give legal advice to Texas, at least for now. But the other advice, like in the course and stuff, applies to everybody everywhere. Any lawyer you're ever going to hire would really wish that you came in with your divorce notebook with all your stuff ready to go. They would really wish you took the time to improve your parenting situation, and you had a go plan, and you knew where you were headed. So, and all the socials are just my name, Hannah Hembree Bell, on every single place. Oh. The other thing, I have a podcast also, Jess. So it's called Not Saving It for Later. And you can listen to it on all the podcast places. It's the podcast guiding women through divorce and beyond. And we are 8 episodes into season 1, 4 more to go. They're all kind of ready to go. And we're already beginning to record for season 2. So I'm doing it in kind of chunks. And just the idea of like, we're not saving life for later. We're not saving joy and happiness. We're not putting them on layaway. And we're figuring out how to do that in the context of divorce as being one way that we do that. So they can follow along for the Not Saving It for Later. We did the episode, at least when we're recording this, one of the episodes we just did was about like in a divorce, all the different smart devices you don't even know about and all of the information they're tracking on you. Like, did you know your Sleep Number bed is a smart bed, and it knows the size of the people that have been in it and maybe even the activities they've been engaging in there. And I had no idea to even think about that, right? So we're digging into some of that stuff that I think people will find really helpful. We've got a great one coming up next season talking about like narcissism, but from an actual psychologist who knows what she's talking about and how to handle that. So anyway, they can also listen to us on the podcast too.
I already know people I'm going to save that or send that to. And I will list everything that you mentioned. I will put in the show notes so it's easy for our listeners to just go ahead and go and check out. But is there anything else you want to leave with our listeners before we say goodbye?
I guess, the thing I've been thinking about lately, ladies, is the call to like know thyself and to thine own self be true. It's like to learn who you are and then listen to her. That's the job. That's the whole job. My belief is our job on this planet is to become, your job, Jess, is to become the youest you. And that's the job. And you can't do that if you don't know who you are and you're not willing to listen to what you find. Because if I've ever met a woman who knows herself and is listening to herself, that intuition, it's never wrong. It will never lead you astray because you're tapped into the greater intelligence, universal intelligence, God, whatever it is, Buddha, whoever, whatever you think it is, Jesus, everybody. My sister says that God, Jesus, and all the good witches. And doing just that, it really can be that simple. It takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of bravery, but it's worth it. And I'd love to be a part of witnessing all of us as women doing exactly that.
Oh, that's perfect way to end the show. Thank you again. This has been absolutely wonderful. It was so great to have you on.
Oh, thank you, Jess. Thanks for having me. And thanks to everybody for listening.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.